It's often been said that America is the biggest cultural melting pot in the world. And because of that, if you come here, no matter where you're from, as long as you work hard enough, you can do whatever you set your mind to. And I feel that is a very important part of the American spirit and ideals. And I feel like there's no one that embodies that spirit and those ideals more so, more perfectly than the subject of today's videos. Somebody I am continuously inspired by and have looked up to at various points in my life as a sort of role model. That being the most successful American immigrant I can name off the top of my head, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Hey everybody, I'm the Vacuuminator, and this is the final installment of Freedom Month. Might be a topic that you think is a little bit unorthodox, but I think is very fitting, because if you look back and look into Arnold Schwarzenegger's story, either by just researching it yourself or watching the recent Netflix documentary that I totally watched legally and not at all in a special way, I think you can see that it is a classic American underdog story because he grew up a very average son of a policeman in a small village with an older brother that he was much more scrawnier than, and a lot of the early points in his life are just kind of very banal memories of playing outside with his brother and being ordered around by his parents, not really having much of an idea about the future until his brother and his brother's friends got him into exercising, and he found his first passion, getting more and more into it to the point of even surpassing his brother and all his friends, starting to dream of competing in local and national and international bodybuilding competitions, and eventually being able to go out and chase that dream. First, leaving his home country of Austria to go and compete at an international competition in UK, and then, with the help of some friends, coming and competing in America at a time when that sport was still very much in its heyday here. And I really love this point in Arnold's story because, well, I mean, it's just crazy and very sobering to think about the fact that that man has been working out ever since he was a little kid, and that's why he looks as good as he does today. It's very inspiring for me as somebody who only really came into physical fitness as an important part of my life in my early 20s, and clearly I still have a ways to go on my fitness journey. It's nice to be reminded that Arnold has been in the game this long, and it's only for that reason that he's as good as he is today. And that's only the first chapter of his story. And if you think about it, he kind of could have stopped there because he became a multiple time world champion in bodybuilding. He could have just stopped there and already had his name in the history books as one of the early poster boys for bodybuilding here in the West, pioneering that sport as a popular thing. But when he realized his body was getting to the point where pushing it to the level he had to compete was no longer 100% safe, he realized it was time to retire, step back, let somebody else have a shot, and not hang around as some relic of the past in the system, but to move on to another one, to another arena that interested him, that of being an actor, which at the time was laughable. A lot of people told Arnold right to his face that it's never going to happen. You're never going to get any major roles because of the way you look and because of your accent. Americans don't like somebody speaking in a thick accent they can barely understand. At the time, big muscular guys weren't the popular look for a leading man. But through sheer force of persistence and confidence and his own charisma and even his connections he'd already made with people in the industry through just being around in the LA bodybuilder scene, he was able to break in through independent roles like his Hercules movie and the first Terminator. Because that's something a lot of people tend to forget, is that the first Terminator movie was kind of a smaller independent production that just happened to be crazy successful. And Arnold only really got into that role because of how persistent he was and because of how many friends he made. Even back then, before the modern age of online instant communication, being persistent, being on top of people, and being nice and friendly to them was an important part of being a personality in the industry, as much so, probably even more so than it is today. But it's still an important part of the industry today, and that's why us YouTubers have to remind you at some point in the video to, hey, like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, share the video around, engage with the YouTube algorithm so that other people can find my videos and I can continue to be successful. And yeah, I just did it naturally in the video without saying I was specifically telling you to do it for this video, except for the part where I am doing it now. God damn it. Point is, Arnold had to work very hard and break through a lot of barriers to get the role he did that made him into a star. And when you think about it, his starring role in Terminator isn't even that much of a starring role. Linda Hamilton is much more the main character in the original Terminator, and even in the second Terminator, she's more of the main character. Arnold is simply a threat that's constantly chasing after her. He's a slasher villain in that first movie, and in the same style as some of the most famous slasher villains. He's very silent, speaks sparingly, and when he is in the room, he has a commanding presence that just wipes everyone in his path out of the way. And I think that's a big part of what made the first Terminator so successful, is that it limited Arnold's presence and made it very clear that the threatening aspect of the Terminator, which could only be embodied by a guy that looked like him, was the point of the movie. And that's why Terminator 1 and Terminator 2 together are kind of my favorite film, because they embraced the success of the first one and gave Arnold a much more starring, more heroic role, but in a way that felt natural and still used him sparingly. Like, there's probably a million videos on YouTube at this point about how well done John Connor and the T-800's relationship is in that second movie, but it's really just a perfect take on the robot slowly becoming more and more human archetype trope storytelling method that it makes it great. And combine that with some spectacular action and brilliant effects for the time, and that's why those first two Terminator movies are together my favorite movie of all time. And I'll probably never check out the other ones because everybody has told me they pale in comparison. And getting back to the real world story, this is what catapulted Arnold into stardom and made him one of the biggest Hollywood personalities of the 1980s and 1990s. His almost anti-charisma that looped back around into being charismatic and made people like him in those sparing roles in movies and want more and more of him in real life. So they got more and more of him in the movies, him getting more and more traditional leading man type roles that led to him being something of an icon of that period in film and having an almost legendary rivalry with the other action star of the time, Sylvester Stallone. So again, we're at this point that is just kind of incredible to step back and think about for a moment. A American immigrant from Austria that looks like the Incredible Hulk went from being a bodybuilder with a couple of world championships under his belt to being one of the biggest, most popular, highest paid actors in Hollywood. This man is already a fantastic example of the success you can have by moving from another country to America and working hard. He already has his name in the history books. But that wasn't enough for Arnold, because after letting his acting career simmer down a little bit, he got married to a member of the Kennedy family, and as soon as they were kind of settled into their life, he went, you know what, maybe I'll give politics a shot too, and successfully ran for and became the governor of California, which at the time, again, was insane. Nobody thought he could do it as this immigrant actor kind of wild man. But there he was, giving speeches, going out, seeing people, helping them, and passing laws. It's kind of crazy that, like, to somebody my age, a child of the 2000s, this is where we first knew Arnold from. I knew Arnold Schwarzenegger as the governor of California before I knew him as anything else. And that's kind of incredible. Like everything else in the man's story, it's kind of incredible. And it's just on top of an already huge pile of incredible achievements. And that's not to say this point in his life was perfect. He did have his fair share of controversies during that time, but he never got convicted for any of that stuff. None of it ever, like, fully ruined his reputation. And if anything, they just prove that he's just human like the rest of us. We all screw up. Some of us more publicly than others. And sometimes it's not even really our fault, but the fact that it happened is still there. I'm not ignoring it. I don't like that it happened. I don't like that he's not perfect. But you know what? He's only human. So am I. Maybe I'll fuck up one day in a public fashion. Hopefully not as spectacularly as some of that stuff is. But it's important to remember that just because somebody stumbles and loses their way doesn't mean they can't get back up and continue on the path to greatness, which Arnold did. He never got kicked out of office through all that stuff. He finished out his term, which was still a pretty good period for the state of California, and he didn't continue on with politics after that. He said, I did this thing, I did everything I wanted to do, or at least as much as I could with my time, and I'm not going to hang around where I'm not wanted anymore and where there's not a lot of good to be done anymore. He kind of entered into what is now seen as his modern retirement period, even though he's not really 100% retired. Like, he still works out regularly. He'll still show up at big bodybuilding competitions sometimes. He's been in plenty of movies over the last few years. And he's also, like, just every once in a while releasing these really cool, inspiring speeches on social media, commenting on current hot button issues in the country, which I find way more captivating and interesting and motivational than anything a currently active politician has to say. And yeah, that's probably partly because he definitely has his own Hollywood level production crew working directly for him producing that stuff, but that doesn't change the fact that it's good stuff. The simple fact of the matter is, Arnold Schwarzenegger is a great man, an incredible man who I find immensely inspiring. If I can have 1/10 the level of success he's had in his lifetime so far by the time mine is over, then that will have been a life well spent, in my opinion. And that's why I wanted to end Freedom Month by talking about his career and what it means to me. Because think about it. My catchphrase is, you never truly fail until you stop trying. And Arnold embodies that perfectly. The man has never stopped trying to do great things, and he has succeeded in every area he has pursued through sheer persistence, hard work, charisma, and being nice to people and forming connections that can help him along the way. That's the kind of person I try to be every day. Maybe I don't succeed, but I'm still trying my damnedest, and that should still count for something, just like his career should still count as one of the greatest success stories of an American immigrant there's ever been. Certainly one of the most well publicized ones there's ever been. So yeah, that's the end of Freedom Month. I hope you guys have enjoyed this little experiment. I hope you found at least one or two of the videos kind of interesting and have been supporting me both in the YouTube algorithm and on Patreon. Don't forget, we're trying to get to 2,500 subscribers by the end of the year and $100 on Patreon by the end of the year, and every little bit you can contribute helps, especially because editing vac has to cut in to deliver the ending of the video here, because originally when I shot this a couple weeks ago, it ended in a tease for what I had planned for next month, which has now been canceled due to circumstances beyond my control. Watch the most recent live stream if you want the full explanation on that. I don't have time to get into that again. This video is already over 15 minutes long, so I just want to get an ending in here for you guys to say that, yeah, that is definitely the end of Freedom Month. Nothing else planned before the 31st, but when we come back in the month of August, I'm going to be doing something a little different from all this. It's not going to be American media, it's going to be Japanese media, because we're going to be exploring the different stages of my journey through the tokusatsu fandom, becoming a tokusatsu fan, and looking at various shows that kind of define the different periods of my history. And one of them isn't even a show. One of them is a movie. We're going to be starting off talking about a movie, but I'm not going to tell you what that movie is just yet. You'll have to tune in next week to the channel to find out what it is. Until then, thank you so much for watching Freedom Month. Whether you've been following along week to week or you just binged it all in the playlist, I appreciate your viewership. I appreciate you engaging with the algorithm, and I appreciate you at least considering supporting me on Patreon. Until next time, this is the Vacuuminator, fading back into the end screen.